Alright, I am back with another video, and today we're doing another Elden Ring build. Even though last week's video was an April Fool's video, I was serious about wanting to bring Elden Ring to the channel, and I thought as sort of a transition, I would try and recreate the cast of Baldur's Gate 3 in Elden Ring. Basically kind of taking inspiration from the D&D classes, the kind of character's own personality and what they kind of do in the game, and try and reflect it as close as I can in game with mechanics and an overall look. I got the sliders for this character offline. For those of you that don't know, sliders are basically, you know, the little settings you do to make your character's appearance. I got them from online, so if you want to recreate this character's look, I'll have it in the description below. But today, obviously, we're doing Astarion. So with Astarion, he's got a few things going for him. He's obviously a vampire, so we want to kind of get maybe some blood-related things, although Astarion, by default, as a rogue, doesn't really do blood magic so much, so I mainly focused on kind of Ashes of War and, you know, infusions that inflict bleeding, rather than actually, you know, giving him, like, things like Blood Blade and such like that. So I think we got quite an interesting combination of things here. Trying to get his look down was a bit tricky. I mean, the face, I think, looks decent. And the overall kind of vibe is there, but getting that like the right chest piece was really hard, and I've got a few options for you there. So let's get into the stats. Now, this is a level 137 build, as I kind of am doing with these builds, because I want to kind of treat these builds like you're going to mostly be doing regular gameplay with them, perhaps perhaps a New Game Plus run. So this is kind of what I would consider the final build. Being at level 137 means you can get into multiplayer with both people who are around the 120 and 150 range, which are the two kind of popular level ranges, so you'll be able to get both here, so you should still have a lot of online activity. But here are the stats. Vigor is at 60, because that was the biggest complaint with the April Fool's Shadowheart video, is that my vigor was at 40, which is not enough for online playing, and this build was quite able to comfortably fit 60 in it, so we've gone with that. Oh, this build is starting with the Vagabond class, but that's just the save file that I have, but you could probably finagle it with a different class if you're starting from scratch to get a bit more points. I will have the link to the EIP build page for this build down below. You just kind of have to copy and paste the code that's in the description into the import section at the bottom, and you'll be able to get this build exactly as I've written it down. So you can kind of adjust and see what classes would make more sense to eke out a few more points in this build, if you so like. But like I said, Vigor is at 60 for a decent chunk of health. Mind is at 10, because while we do have some Ashes of War on this build, we don't really need Mind. They don't exactly cost a lot of FP, and we've got a couple of blue flasks on this build just to kind of get that FP back. Endurance is at 20. I feel like this is a pretty decent amount of stamina for this build. I didn't feel like I needed too much more, at least in my testing. Strength is at 18. I found that putting my strength to at least 18 gave us a pretty decent boost in AR overall with our weapons. Dexterity is at 50, because it's our kind of main attacking stat, and we've left intelligence and faith at base and put arcane at 45, because obviously this is a build that wants to induce blood loss, so we want to have a decent chunk of arcane to be able to do that, as well with a lot of our equipment being infused with the blood infusion, because that also kind of worked out as having higher AR with these stats. Not exactly sure how that works, but we can show that off in a minute. As for our equipment, I'll go over the weapons first. Of course, we're doing the Blood Misericord here. So, the Misericord is one of the best daggers in the game, or perhaps even the best dagger in the game, for critical hits. So, if we're going to be playing a kind of D&D inspired sneaky rogue that basically sneaks up on people and does sneak attacks, then this is exactly what we're going to want. So basically this build is going to have two modes. One is your sneaky beaky mode, where you're kind of sneaking through a bunch of different things, basically through environments, getting backstabs and critical hits and such on opponents rather than fighting them one-on-one, and then we'll have kind of a boss fight mode where we have a more direct form of combat. But with the Misericord infused with the blood infusion, you're getting a 140 critical here, and a pretty decent bit of AR here, 363, which isn't the highest it could possibly be. Obviously, if you were to build this perhaps with a, like, you know, this isn't like necessarily an optimized build, as is with my Baldur's Gate 3 builds. This is more of a kind of just like trying to get the lore stuff in here. So we have a decent AR here. You're going to get a lot of damage off of the criticals, just maybe not one hit KOing every enemy in the game, but I feel like this will still do enough damage. I mean, if you wanted to focus completely on like a fully optimized Misericord crit fishing build, then you're probably going to want like a flame art or lightning infused dagger, because it will do more damage with the split, but overall this will do pretty well. And I've decided to try and capture the actual mechanic of the rogue's sneak attack from Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D by including Royal Knight's Resolve. By using Royal Knight's Resolve, you're able to get a big boost to your next attack, a massive attack increase. In fact, we're in a save zone right now, but if I go upstairs, I'll just quickly run up there for you. Hold on. I was like, oh yeah, I'll film in a cool location that kind of reminds me of the castle. Yeah, in fact, actually, this is a lot prettier. Right, so with Royal Knight's Resolve, we have 363 AR at base, but if we use Royal Knight's Resolve, that very briefly goes up to 653 for a big backstab. It only lasts for a few seconds though, so you'll have to sneak up behind your foe, Royal Knight's Resolve, and then stab. But it should work, and again, if you're able to like parry your opponent and get like a critical hit off that way, it will also do really nicely. The buff lasts for a little while, or until you do your next attack. There you go. So it lasts about like, what, 10 seconds? So you'll have to kind of time your attacks well, but again, sneak up behind your foe, shing, kabling. Probably want to use maybe like a silence spell on yourself, like a Shadow Step or Assassin's Gambit, to kind of make sure you're not seen as you sneak up. Yeah, I haven't included any spells on this build. As you can see, I kind of just left the default from my playthrough, but you'll want things probably like, you know, the ones that muffle your sound, or even the talismans that do the same. We'll get to those in a minute. But of course, as with most of my Astarion builds in Baldur's Gate 3, we are going to be dual wielding with this build. So in addition to the Blood Misericord giving us a bunch of bleed, we're also going to have the Reduvia in the offhand. Now, most people usually don't put Reduvia in the offhand because they would rather have it in the main hand to be able to use its Ash of War to, you know, do the ranged blood attack. But again, Astarion doesn't really do that, like, as a default rogue. So I decided to have it in the offhand just for the bleed build-up and to be a special weapon rather than a normal weapon, so that we're a little bit less harsh on our like equipment our upgrade items. Sorry, I'm still a bit new to doing Elden Ring builds. It's been a while. So with this, I mean, you could use the Bloodstained Dagger. That would technically eke out a bit more bleed, but the Reduvia is absolutely fine. You can get it early on as well as with the Misericord, so you can get this strategy online quite soon. And again, it splits your upgrade materials between the Somber Smithing Stones and the regular Smithing Stones, so you're going to feel a bit better as you progress through the game with this strategy. And dual-wielding daggers, you have a very, very fast moveset, and the Misericord's extended range here, as you can see, is going to help you catch enemies a bit easier. So yeah, basically your kind of other combat mode is to be able to dual wield and just do a ton of attacks. Both of these having bleed on them will build up that bleed really, really quickly. So if you manage to get off your critical attack but your enemy's still standing, you just go absolutely blender mode on them and you should be fine. And yeah, you'll build up that bleed really, really quickly, because as you can see, the Blood Misericord has 108 blood loss and the Reduvia has 87, so you're going to build that up quite quickly. Speaking of blood loss, oh, and the Reduvia obviously doesn't have a specific Ash of War, it has its Reduvia Blood Blade. If you want to use that, equip it in the main hand, but otherwise you shouldn't need to. Next up, I've also got the Blood Asper Rapier here, so I kind of wanted another alternative mode for this, and Astarion with a rapier made perfect sense. So what you're going to get with this is, and unfortunately I don't have it maxed out, so we're not seeing the full AR, I just did not have the materials here to upgrade all of my weapons to full, but at plus 20 it has a 342 AR, so if you have that maxed out, it's probably going to be, I mean, you can see in the build calculator below, but it's going to be a lot higher, so you're going to get a bit more out of it. But the main thing that this weapon is going to do for us is it's going to allow us to build up Scarlet Rot. If blood loss isn't really working out for us, which this weapon can still do, we can build up a bit of Scarlet Rot as well as building up that bleed instead. Perhaps the enemy's heavily resistant to it or immune to it, so you can still get off a pretty powerful status effect that's going to help you out overall. And again, it kind of has that red vibe, like that gold and red kind of matches Astarion's kind of vibe, but it looks a bit vampiric in nature. The moveset's pretty good. It's a little bit slow, in my opinion. That's just me, though, but I mean, you'll do perfectly fine. You'll be able to get stabs off. I would probably go for, like, jumping attacks. But the main thing here is the Ash of War, which I've gone with Blood Tax. Blood Tax is going to do extra bleed build-up for us, basically being a rapid attack as well. It means that you're going to be able to get multiple hits off quite quickly and possibly stagger your opponent. So you should be able to get off bleed, Scarlet Rot, and get some decent damage in quite easily with that. Let me just drink up. There we go. So yeah, I feel like it's nice to kind of have an alternate mode, another kind of win condition, I suppose, where you can, you know, have that little bit of extra damage, that extra status build up, because Scarlet Rot is very powerful. And finally, there's one more aspect of Astarion that I wanted to get, and that is obviously his unique ability from Baldur's Gate 3, the Vampiric Bite. But how on earth are we going to get that in Elden Ring? Well, I have the Keen Guitar here, so the Keen Infused Guitar, which is a fist weapon infused with Lifesteal Fist. Now, the reason I went with the guitar is because Lifesteal Fist works off of your crit range. So, and these have the kind of, and these have 110 critical rather than just 100, that like kind of the like Spike Saestus gets, for example. And as such, with this, if you grab an opponent, when you grab them, it kind of does this thing where you like grab onto them and you kind of lean into them. It looks a bit vampiric, and you do regain HP from it as well. You kind of sap the health from your opponent. So this is kind of how we're getting the bite attack that Astarion has. I'll show this off in the kind of combat footage, quote unquote, later. I'll kind of show off like how this works, but this is kind of how I decided to get Astarion's bite in game, by basically just having the Lifesteal Fist. Now obviously this is a lot of weapons to have equipped, so if you're good with your inventory you can like hot swap between them, but we have enough equip load on this build to be able to be medium load and still have all of these equipped. You just have to like cycle through them as you like. And the guitar I think works out quite nicely as well. As much as I would have liked to have used like a more subtle fist weapon, the fact that this still kind of looks like you're dual wielding daggers, and it has a decent moveset as well, I feel like it works out quite nicely. So overall, quite happy with the weapon selection. I think you have multiple modes that will be interesting to use, each and every one of them. The dual dagger mode will be probably your main kind of way of fighting, again going for those critical hits and that rapid blood loss build-up, but also you have other options like the ability to inflict Scarlet Rot and steal your opponent's HP. Unfortunately, Lifesteal Fist only works against humanoid enemies, so NPCs, kind of soldier-type enemies, in like other players, so that might be where you primarily want to use it if you're doing like invasions, which I can see Astarion totally doing. So yeah, that's kind of our final weapon selection. As for the outfit, I've gone with the Commoner's Headband Altered. Again, I just wanted to show off the face, and the hair kind of hides it, so it's basically just a tiny bit of defense for not really any loss visually. The Page's Garb is the one I've gone for. I've altered it to remove the cape, because again, I feel like this is slightly regal looking, kind of has that general color scheme. You can't tell, unfortunately, kind of in this kind of lighting, but you do see in like the icon there that it does have a slightly purplish look, so it felt closest to Astarion. But the other ones I did consider was things like the Guardian Garb, if you can, but it felt a bit too gold, I don't know. We also have things like the what else? My original choice was to go with this, the Nomadic Merchant's Finery, because it kind of, but I thought it looked a bit too I don't know, worn down, like it's got holes in it and all of that. This outfit could also work as well. The War Surgeon Gown, which has been altered, that could also work. Just anything you think like looks appropriate will do. But my personal choice is the Page's Garb, to kind of get as close as I could, at least in my opinion. There are obviously other things you could wear. Next up, the gold bracelets. Again, I kind of wanted to just keep it fancy, keep the hands visible, because again, that's kind of what the default look for Astarion is. He doesn't really wear like big heavy gauntlets or gloves, so I went with the golden bracelets here. But you could put anything you like on. The Goldskin Noble bracelets would hide quite nicely. You could put some gloves on him. It's entirely up to you. You could put the bandages on him if you want. It's entirely up to you. Choose what you like here. Did these hide as well? No, those go over the top. But again, you can kind of choose whatever you like here. My personal choice is the golden bracelets because I just like them fashion-wise, but you can pick whatever you like. And finally, we have the Preceptor's trousers, just basically some kind of like fancier-looking trousers that look a bit sleek. I felt fit the build quite nicely, so yeah, that's what I went with. Again, not very high defenses overall. You're definitely going to want to be relying more on your sneaking when you're not fighting bosses so that you don't take too much damage, but overall, you should be fine. I mean, again, armor, I find armor, unless you're going like full in on heavy armor, doesn't really matter too much. You're going to get hit by things, especially in New Game Plus anyway. So, you know, this should be fine. And finally, the talismans. We have the Dagger Talisman to make our critical hits even stronger. I have the Prophesis Wearer Heirloom here to raise our dexterity by 5, bringing it to a total of 50. But I would replace this with Millicent's Prosthesis. I didn't have it in this playthrough, because in this playthrough, I went for the Rotten Wing Sword Talisman instead, which you could also use if you prefer. But with Millicent's Prosthesis, you are going to get a +5 to your dex, which is what the Prosthesis Wearer Heirloom gives you, but also an increase to your damage on consecutive attacks, so you would be able to do more damage the more you attack. And with our dual-wield dagger strategy, you'll be able to attack so many times, you'll be able to get the buff from that quite frequently, so upgrade this to Millicent's Prosthesis in your playthrough if you can. Next up is the Shard of Alexander. This is going to make things like our Blood Tax on the Antspur Rapier and the Lifesteal Fist even stronger. And finally, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, increasing our attack power once blood loss occurs. So when the bleed status is inflicted, and the enemy's HP suddenly goes down, this will activate, giving you even more attack power. So even though our AR seems a bit low at the start, between things like Royal Knight's Resolve, the bleed status effect, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, and our and again, if you have Millicent's Prosthesis along with the Shard of Alexander, as well as the Dagger Talisman, all this is going to come together to be super strong. And finally, for our Flask of Wondrous Physic, we have the Thorny Cracks tier to temporarily boost successive attack power, so same as the Millicent's Prosthesis or the Rotten Wing Sword Talisman. You'll get, if the more attacks you do, the more power you get. As well as the Stone Barbed Cracked tier to make stance breaking easier, so with those rapid attacks, your enemies will get staggered more, which means you can go for this high power critical hits with the Misericord. So yeah, with that, let's move on to the combat footage and the kind of battle test against, well, you know who. Okay, so before we get into an actual boss fight, I thought I would quickly show off a couple of things. Namely, number one, our sneak attack damage with Royal Knight's Resolve on the Misericord, as well as the Lifesteal Fist. I mean, hopefully we can show off both. This probably won't instantly kill him. So let's go behind him, totally normal, pretend I'm all like a stealthy rogue. Royal Knight's Resolve, and yeah, 2,163 damage on a sneak attack. Let's test this out. Ow. Smacked me in the face. Okay. And then let's... the only problem you're going to have is poising through the attack. But there you go, we're biting him. Doesn't do as much damage. Again, you can optimize that way further to basically one-shot if you know what you're doing, but that's not this build. But yeah, there's the Astarion Vampire Bite, so we're just going to Blood Tax. And there we go. Yeah, Maidenless, sure I am. But yeah, there you go. There's kind of an example of kind of how the build works against players, I suppose. Obviously, the Lifesteal Fist is going to be a bit trickier to land. You may want to put your the physic that kind of gives you like immense poise on to be able to do that. I think Lost My Sanity, I think it used to be called, but I think it's just called Lost now, has an amazing video on the Lifesteal Fist. If you kind of, I'll put it in the description for you, if you kind of want to learn how to optimize that further if you want to for this build. If you want to maybe do like an invasion build, otherwise, I think this is actually just perfectly fine for the game as well. Ooh, bloody fingers. Lovely. Let's move on to the boss fight. And here we are at the Margit fight, so let's get on with it. Show off how this build works against bosses. So, I think I'll start off with the Antspur Rapier, just to kind of get off that Scarlet Rot, see if I can, because I wasn't able to do it, because I kind of thought the boss you're supposed to die to at the start. Oh. And I want to see if I can get it off. Okay. I'm gonna drink this. And I'm gonna drink this. Then we're gonna Blood Tax. There you go, there's our first bleed. Rolled way too early on that, but that's fine, I still dodged it. Gonna go for another Blood Tax. He dodged it. Oh no, got him with the last hit. And 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that Scarlet Rot is not really proccing. Oh, that's interesting, but it will proc. It just takes time. Let's go for some... Dodge that. Yeah, you can see... you can see the kind of power that we're working with here. I'm just kind of tanking hits because I have a lot of HP, but really I should be playing a lot better. And there you go, he's dead. As you can see, this build is capable of lots of damage. We get off bleed quite a lot. In fact, I didn't check the AR while we had the Lord of Blood's Exaltation up, but obviously it's quite high. So even with the Antspur Rapier, we can get blood off quite easily. So yeah, anything that's weak to bleed is, or at the very least, not immune to it. Yeah, alright, Margit Shush is going to work pretty well. But yeah, that is the build. This is how I would personally play as Astarion in Elden Ring. Again, for a map kind of like this, in fact, I could probably show it off. Hang on. If I quickly go to the... Oh, this is just kind of a last-minute thing here. Again, I like to improvise with these videos. If you kind of look at the kind of spell list that we have here, we can also pick up some things like... where are they? Yeah, Unseen Form. You'll have to put a little bit of intelligence into this build, perhaps if you want to use some of the like stealth spells. But like Unseen Form, Unseen Blade could also work. We also have the spell that is somewhere here, I know it exists, that like makes you not make any noise, stuff like that. You can throw a few of those in there if you want, but you could also, but I would personally recommend if you're doing like stealth invasions to pick up the talismans, and I'll quickly show them off, that kind of help with like the stealthy kind of aspect of things. I've actually done like assassin stealth builds at like low levels before. I'll have to show that one of those off at some point. But you could go for things like the long-tail cat talisman that grants immunity to fall damage, because obviously when you take damage in like an invasion or something, your health bar appears. So if you don't want to be seen, you want to have this equipped. The trick mirror to take on the appearance of a host of fingers, so you're not this big glowing red light, so you're a bit more stealthy that way. Crepus's Vial to eliminate all sound made by the wearer, stuff like that. So if you wanted to kind of do like a stealthy type of invasion thing against other players, this is certainly what you could go for. But I would feel like if you're going for mainly just the kind of stealthy aspect against regular enemies in the game, since Royal Knight's Resolve isn't affected by the Shard of Alexander, slip that away and pop on Crepus's Vial to be able to sneak up on NPCs, no problem, and get off those big Royal Knight's Resolve critical hits. Alright, that is going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed the build. Again, kind of experimenting with newer content here, getting Elden Ring videos done up till the release of the DLC in June, which I'm super excited for. Let me know which of the Baldur's Gate 3 cast you would like to see me build for next. Some are a bit easier to build for, like, for example, Gale. I mean, gee, I wonder what I'm going to do there. I'll make him a wild magic sorcerer again. I'll do it. I'll find a way. But no. Anyways, let me know who you would like to see next. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.